right around 1 o'clock. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started. It's going to be it's a tight schedule. We got talks every 15 minutes. So uh, if everyone just try to wrap things up at minute 12 or whatever, to allow for a question or two if there are any, and then we'll just be ready to get the next talk started right after that. So if everyone else is visiting, this is the first session of four of the MGIS Capstone final presentations. So excited to have you all here. And Gabe, why don't you take it away?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Um, yeah, all right. Let's see if I can zoom through this and wrap up in about 12 minutes. So, my name's Gabe Branch. I'm a utility management consultant focused on water and wastewater based in the Atlanta area, and wrapping up the MGIS program here. And so, the project I'm giving an overview of today is called Planning for Optimal Sewer Maintenance, Developing a Wastewater Maintenance Decision Support System using Esri tools. So, a little bit of context here. Sanitary sewer overflows are a challenge for a lot of sewer utilities and pose major environmental and public health risks. They're typically caused by structural or maintenance related issues, things like not being cleaned often enough. And so, historically, sewer maintenance data collection relies heavily on fragmented paper based systems, a lot of times creating inefficiencies and errors in the data collection, as well as making reporting on this data challenging. With this, a lot of utilities do have access to either base level Esri tools with their basic organization or even some beyond that. And so GIS tools offer a modern way to standardize workflows in this system and make maintenance more proactive. So my goal here was to create a GIS-based spatial decision support system using Esri tools to improve preventative sewer maintenance. And as a basis, I used ArcGIS field maps for data collection and ArcGIS dashboards for visualization. Two tools, both included in that base level Esri organization, mainly focused on providing an accessible maintenance solution for field and office users. So a quick overview of some of the existing research on spatial decision support systems and sewer asset management. Like I mentioned at the top, sewer blockages typically caused by either structural or maintenance related issues. Structural is a little bit hard to plan for, but maintenance related issues typically are caused by roots, grease, and debris, and can be prevented by proactive cleaning. uh, Fragmented data systems often hinder the maintenance efficiency overall with most of these solutions too. Looking at mobile GIS and mobile data collection, it's been shown mobile GIS improves field data collection, whether through data controls, improved visibility of the data for folks out in the field, or simply efficiency in data collection. Piece with this is a practical integration of a lot of these tools are still evolving, and there have been shown to be difficulties in integrating data across different softwares. Looking at spatial decision support systems, SDSS. Spatial decision support system often can help asset managers make informed, data-driven decisions. You can do this through integrating spatial and temporal data, and in the context of sewer maintenance, pulling in any cleaning data found. Key components of a spatial decision support system related to sewer maintenance include the capability to provide predictive analytics for sewer blockages. And lastly, looking at past research on dashboarding and the role of dashboards in infrastructure management. It's been shown visualizing data helps provide real-time insights and prioritizing maintenance tasks for folks out in the field. And best practices for having a dashboard available to help generate insights, make some of these decisions, include clean layouts and interactive filters for folks. So a quick look at the data and methods I used in my project. Like I mentioned at the top, ArcGIS field maps and ArcGIS dashboards were chosen as two tools included with that base level Esri subscription. And so utilizing that as well as data being hosted in ArcGIS Online. For this project, I pulled existing data, specifically gravity main lines and gravity manhole layers from Seattle Public Utilities, simply because their sewer maintenance data is, well, sewer asset data is open source. They host all that online. Custom data included here, created for this project, included a table to capture maintenance events, those sewer cleanings, as well as smart forms configured based off of the table created. And I'll touch on that in a few slides. So ideally, developing an application like this, developing a SDSS would look like performing needs assessment interviews with various end users, as well as an iterative evaluation and user testing of the tool using tabletop exercises or things like that throughout that development process. Due to the compact nature of this project and semester, I ended up utilizing one potential end user, not multiple different folks, but did hold a needs assessment at the front end to help gather perspectives from both field operations and asset managers down the lines, utilizing the data that's collected out in the field. This did end up helping shape the smart form structure and the dashboard priorities, making sure that the system is practical and useful, essentially. So a key piece of development was to create a related table and a relationship between the gravity mains layer and the maintenance event table. And so what this is showing is that gravity main table came from existing data set from Seattle Public Utilities, but the gravity mains cleanings table is just a table, but has a relationship to the asset ID on that gravity main table. And so the needs assessment conducted at the front end of this helped indicate what data is important being collected while out in the field. One piece with this is this process was done in ArcGIS Pro, creating the table, creating domains on the table, as well as creating the relationship. And then it was published and hosted into ArcGIS Online. And with that relationship, it is one-to-many, just because there may be multiple cleaning events that happen on the same asset. And so once the underlying data schema was in place, Smart Form was developed in ArcGIS Field Maps Designer for mobile data collection and started moving towards developing a dashboard in ArcGIS Dashboards for office use and decision support using this data. Moving towards the product coming out of this project. Like I mentioned, the first part of this was a mobile field data collection tool built in utilizing ArcGIS Field Maps and ArcGIS Field Maps Designer. So first part of the process was developing a web map and a smart form based off that data set up in the previous slides. Smart form captures blockage severity and work management data and is tied to that cleaning events table. One of the big pieces here coming out of the needs assessment, as well as that past research, is focusing on utilizing data controls where possible to make things as efficient and effective as possible, creating these mobile field data collection forms. So that's things like adding data controls like dropdowns and using Arcade wherever possible to automate steps like bringing in the cleaning date. What we're looking at here shows ArcGIS Field Maps, the app developed in their mobile app. And ideally, like mentioned, this would be refined based on user testing to ensure ease of use even during active maintenance activities. This gives an overview of the dashboard created for office use to help asset managers plan in real time where areas of their system would benefit from increased maintenance. It's connected to a hosted layer view of the same data source that the field operators are utilizing, but symbology and visuals benefit review of the data rather than collecting the data. Right now, this highlights production metrics and cleaning findings, and also incorporates filters for both temporal and work management fields on that form. And relatively limited due to the scope of this project, but there are areas for continued development highlighted later on in this presentation. Like I mentioned, looking forward to potential future functionality of both the mobile field data collection tool and the dashboard. Hopefully, potentially continue expanding on it in the future. Things like developing logic for automated maintenance scheduling using ArcGIS notebooks, incorporating advanced symbology like heat maps to better visualize hotspots for preventative maintenance needs, as well as incorporating additional data layers such as population projections for additional reference and generating insights based off of the information coming in. And just some quick concluding thoughts on this. So benefits coming out of this tool's use include hopefully improved sewer maintenance planning and fewer overall sanitary sewer overflows. This project shows the capability for low cost but high value use of GIS-based tools for moving away from reactive sewer maintenance towards proactive cleaning, and provides a framework for future GIS-based maintenance planning. And I have all my references here, so that's my spiel. Any questions?
Gabe, that was terrific.
Thank you.
Stay on this slide for a second. Did you take that picture of that sewer manhole cover with the water shooting out? Or did you
No,
find
but
that
there are a few pictures sprinkled in here that are from site visits. Absolutely.
I don't know what's going on there, but that can't be good.
Yeah, that's the really want to prevent that.
Yeah. Well, so folks, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. So Gabe, presenters, you might want to keep your eye on the chat window when your talk is done. Looks like Jim has a comment there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he took your class
Yep.
last fall. Yeah.
Definitely. That's a big piece that helped influence this.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I had one question, if and other people can think about questions if they have any, but so the system that you designed has a lot of different parts. There's the dashboard part, there's this mobile stuff, and you went with the Esri solution, which I think makes perfect sense. But I was just curious if open source even, if that was something even contemplated, and if that would even work for something this extensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I feel like that's kind of the cost benefit analysis is this through my project, hoping to show a way. I guess I kind of we see Esri as almost the Apple of GIS. It's really easy to set these pieces up and configure these interconnected either data sources or make configuration changes, but you can't always do exactly what you want, and you do have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
Open source being the piece of there is a lot of capability there, and have looked in the past at both QGIS and its respective field map, mobile data collection tool too. So didn't spend a ton of time incorporating into this, but wanted to kind of show using those base level tools with the Esri products.
Gotcha. All right, real quick, we only got a few seconds left, but Zach has a question in there about, would you be able to incorporate this with something like CityWorks to track work orders?
Yeah, that's so CityWorks being one of those, what do you call it? CMMS, computerized maintenance management systems, focus on work management. That's a big piece. integrating between the two would be interesting, but that's something I'm pretty interested in seeing where Esri moves forward. I know they had ArcGIS Workforce for work management that they're moving away from. And from what I've heard, moving towards using a feature called tasks in ArcGIS field maps to help with work management there. So definitely future potentials there.
Great. All right, thanks. There's some more comments in the chat, but for the sake of time, let's move forward here. Kim, if you can share your screen.
Morning. First, let me check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sound great.
Okay, great. So everybody, I already warned Ryan, I'm having weird technical issues, so I might just all of a sudden disappear. So here we go. I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see if I can hopefully share my presentation.
Yep,
Okay.
looks good.
Okay.
Yep,
Great.
when you're ready.
Okay. So I'm Kim Wells, and my capstone project is prioritizing abandoned hard rock mines in Montana. If it's going to let me change the slide. There we go. I work at the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. I'm a GIS analyst for the Waste and Remediation Division, whose mission is to protect human health and the environment. My main responsibilities include GIS business analysis, developing GIS workflows, managing division authoritative content, GIS training and education, and sometimes I actually still get to make maps. The majority of my current work is focused on developing field inspection workflows for programs who are trying to transition from their paper inspection forms to completing inspections with Esri field applications and mobile devices. The need for this project was identified during requirement sessions with the Montana Abandoned Mine Lands Program. The AML program is responsible for managing abandoned coal mines, hard rock mines, and their related mine hazards like polluted water, industrial waste, and dangerous impoundments. AML staff complete reclamation projects to mitigate mine hazards. Recently, AML staff submitted a request to me to develop a field inspection workflow for their abandoned hard rock mines. The AML staff told me that a requirement was to be able to select priority hard rock mines, but they couldn't tell me how they actually were going to prioritize them. In addition to a field inspection workflow, it was clear that the AML program also needs a mine prioritization workflow. The purpose of this project is to develop a GIS workflow to prioritize abandoned hard rock mines and map them by watershed for AML staff to use to plan their 2025 field inspections. This project is important for three main reasons. Reason one, not all abandoned hard rock mines can be inspected in a year. There are 3,841 abandoned hard rock mines that would need to be inspected to obtain a current inventory of mine hazards and determine which of those mine hazards need to be remediated. Reason number two, changing land uses, increased population, and changing environmental conditions becoming natural hazards that are more devastating and expensive to manage are happening in Montana. It is unknown if these changes are impacting abandoned hard rock mine locations. Reason number three, AML is trying to manage abandoned hard rock mines with a watershed approach to match similar other programs in our agency that are managing with the watershed approach. The objectives that will be accomplished by the project, let's see, I might have to, sorry, I got to move this window. Make sure I can read my slide. There we go. Let's see. So the objectives that will be accomplished with this project are a standard repeatable GIS workflow to be implemented for AML staff after the pilot workflow is developed, tested, and approved by the AML program supervisor. The use of GIS technology will be substantiated for managing the life cycle of all abandoned hard rock mines. The promotion of the inclusion of watershed management and natural hazards as they relate to disaster management in the definition of priority hard rock mines. Efficiencies gained and time spent by AML staff managing abandoned hard rock mines. Improved accountability for meeting regulatory mandates and heightened collaboration with stakeholders. As a GIS analyst working to provide a GIS solution to prioritize abandoned hard rock mines, I investigated past research on several topics and found evidence to support the use of GIS that included site selection to identify best locations that meet multiple criteria or requirements for different industries that included solid waste sites and hazardous waste sites, GIS for environmental and public health, GIS for disaster management, and resiliency and remediation design as it applies to hazard management and changing environmental conditions using GIS. The project data included data sets identified and selected based on criteria to be used to select priority hard rock mines. The criteria were developed from the project literature review, AML's past prioritization approach. Hold on, guys, I gotta check. I think I missed the slide there. Nope. Okay, great. So we're back to the data. Sorry about that. I just wanted to check. The criteria were developed from the project literature review, AML's past prioritization approach completed in 1993 to 1994, and from the Office of Surface Mining and Enforcement, a federal stakeholder who provides regulatory authority and funding to the AML program for completing work to remediate mine hazards. Initial methods were proposed to identify priority hard rock mines. These methods included selecting the watersheds or counties with the greatest number of abandoned hard rock mines, but this method ignores individual mine location site characteristics, repeating the 1990 prioritization method, but this method was not able to be applied to all abandoned hard rock mines, and the prioritization was completed after field inspections based on sample data results. The overlay analysis method was also proposed for site selection, but this method does not provide support for conflicting preferences. The final method selected for the project was GIS technology with multi-query decision analysis, or MCDA. The MCDA approach allows for the evaluation of numerous and conflicting preferences into GIS-based decision-making. The analysis process was started by accessing, reviewing, preparing, and adding data sets to Esri's ArcGIS Pro software. Yes, my agency is an Esri shop, so we didn't look at open source solutions or other technologies. We went with what we had because all of the staff already has accounts to this and we're already paying for the software. So all data sets were assigned the same projected coordinate system. New data sets were derived for parcel areas and watersheds that contained abandoned hard rock mines with additional project criteria. Vector data sets were converted to raster data sets and assigned a cell size, and raster data sets were clipped to the project watershed dataset. The MCDA analysis was planned to be completed using Esri's Suitability Modeler tool, an all-in-one suitability tool that includes the use of submodels, reclassification, and weighted criteria analysis that produces a map of suitable locations. For this project, that would have equaled prioritized abandoned hard rock mine parcels. I experienced many issues with this tool and problems with the raster output. If any of you have dealt with, software, Esri software, so in preparation to run this analysis, I read documentation, I completed Esri training specific to the Suitability Modeler tool. And of course it worked, and it always worked the first time. When I was running my analysis and some of the error messages, mine didn't go as smoothly. And so I actually tried to use some of those Esri training data sets to compare to my data to see if I could identify some of the issues. But really, and after hours of troubleshooting, consulting Esri documentation and online searches, I was not able to resolve all of the issues I was experiencing. So I changed the analysis method to a raster suitability analysis, using other pro analysis tools to mimic the Suitability Modeler tool. In my screen capture here of the map, I actually highlighted, I did select by locations, the polygon to raster tools, reclassify, and then use the weighted overlay tool. Raster calculator was also used, but I didn't quite get a screen grab with that. So basically, I chained all of these together to equal, I think, what would have been most of what Esri's Suitability Modeler tool is. The raster data sets were then grouped into subgroups to mimic the submodel concept. These subgroups are mines, natural hazards, human safety, and accessibility. They were classified to a common scale of 1 to 5 and then assigned a weight preference based on importance. So for the mines, the idea being where the importance was placed on mines that have repositories, that were added to sites based on a past remedial design that typically store mine waste. Mines that have drinking water facilities on the same parcel or nearby, and mines that have impaired streams or regular streams on that same parcel. For the natural hazard subgroup, wildfire was placed with the highest preference or concern. Drought was next, and then flood hazards and flood frequency. For the human safety and accessibility subgroup, a higher priority or preference was placed on roads with a proximity to mine parcels that have those abandoned hard rock mines, and then public lands and managed lands also within proximity to mine parcels that have abandoned hard rock mines. The new prioritized mine parcel and watershed data sets have been published as hosted feature layers, added to a web map, and an Experience Builder application in DEQ's Enterprise GIS portal to be reviewed by the AML program supervisor. The conclusion of the suitability analysis is that the pilot GIS workflow is a valid and defensible approach to prioritizing abandoned hard rock mines. The workflow needs to be revised based on feedback from AML staff, and the datasets need to be reviewed to see if it is possible to derive rasters to have more overlapping data in the project area. Oh. Gosh, sorry, I'm getting ahead. Oh, yeah, sorry, and I did miss Here's the results. Sorry, I got off topic. So to meet the project objective from the weighted overlay tool, a final suitability raster was the output was the final suitability raster representing prioritized abandoned hard rock mines. That suitability raster was converted to polygons and then used to create new data sets. The new data sets represent high, medium, and low priority abandoned hard rock mine parcels. There are high, medium, and low priority watershed data sets that contain prioritized abandoned hard rock mine parcels. And then watershed data sets were created with low priority abandoned hard rock mine parcels within 3 miles and 5 miles of incorporated towns. 2,063 mine parcels were prioritized and 118 watersheds were prioritized. And now it would be my conclusion screen. So those polygon layers were published into DEQ's GIS Enterprise as hosted feature layers. They were added to a web map, added to an Experience Builder application for the AML program supervisor to review. Again, conclusion of the suitability analysis is that the pilot GIS workflow is valid and defensible approach to prioritizing abandoned hard rock mines, and that the workflow needs to be revised. My next steps, meeting with the program supervisor, implementing changes and testing the prioritization workflow with the suitability model tool and the raster suitability analysis to compare results. If the testing of the suitability modeler tool is successful, then the Experience Builder suitability widget will be added to the application. If the test with the suitability modeler tool is unsuccessful, alternatives to the Experience Builder suitability widget need to be considered for the application. And then lastly, it will be the integration of those priority abandoned hard rock mines and priority watersheds with AML field inspection workflow to be completed using Esri field applications. My list of references used for the project. Sorry, it got a little messy there. My software was not cooperating. Thanks for listening to my presentation, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Kim. That was excellent. We've got a minute or two left here. So it looks like Gabe has a couple questions
Okay.
in the chat. I'm not sure if you can. Are you able to just read those? Read those aloud so we can hear them.
Let's see, being focused on water, wastewater utilities, I love being able to see priority analysis using GIS. Yes, thank you, Gabe. Yes, especially when we're looking at over 3,000 mines across the state of Montana and about, 5 staff people. Question, is it expected for the process to be run annually, incorporating updated data sets? If so, any thoughts on using model builder? Yeah, eventually my preference is, if I can pull it off, I would like to be able to set it up with the Experience Builder suitability widget so that the supervisor can run it whenever they want to, and that they're not reliant upon me, except for, maybe some changes or enhancements. If not, then I think I might have to, look at maybe like a notebook script and maybe creating a custom built button. but truly, I want this to be able to be a self-service solution for the AML program. So, okay.
All right. Well, I think for the sake of time, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Kim. That was excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Jim has a comment for you in the chat. You can read that and connect with him. Thorin, are you able to share your screen?
All right, let me see if I can do this. Share this one. Share.
Yes,
Okay,
it's working.
awesome. Let me go up to this from beginning. All right, so my name is Lauren Wall, and for my project, I decided to analyze tornadic patterns in relation to climate and weather changes and see if there was a correlation between the two. So for my agenda here, we're going to do the personal introduction. I'm going to discuss the overview of the project, previous research, methodologies, and then get into the results. Okay, so I live in Northwest Arkansas, have for about the last 10 years, and I'm not working right now. I'm just a full-time graduate student and homemaker. Okay, so overview of my project. First, I want to talk a little bit about tornadic patterns. Tornadoes are typically seasonally active, mostly in the spring and summer. They are measured using the Advanced Fujita's Intensity Scale, which can be seen in the table to the right of the screen. And a note about that is the intensity isn't actually assigned until after damage assessment. The max wind speed is used to estimate, but the damage is really what indicates what intensity it is. Tornado Alley, the core of Tornado Alley is thought to be Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, but it's not like a set boundary. It's just where tornadic activity tends to happen, historically speaking. Tornadoes can happen in all 50 states, though. The difference between weather and climate is weather is short-term patterns. So think your weekly forecast, daily forecast, even monthly forecasts. Whereas climate is really patterns over a longer span of time. Generally, the rule of thumb is looking at weather patterns over a span of 30 years. My goals and objectives for this project were to determine if correlation between tornadic patterns and climate changes in climate and weather patterns in recent years exist through analyzing the climate and weather data and then the tornadic pattern data, and then comparing the two. And in doing, the major takeaways were the creation of maps, graphs, charts, etc., that would show any correlation. Previous research pretty much agrees with each other through multiple sources that there has been an increase in variability in recent years of tornadic trends, including changes in when and where they happen. These changes have largely been like, for example, there's been more tornadoes in the fall and winter than there have been in previous years, as well as more tornadoes to the northeast of what is typically considered Tornado Alley. There's also been an increase in tornado outbreaks where there are more than one tornado associated with a storm, and an increase in overall strength of tornadoes. Tornado seasons have also seemed to be more elongated in recent years, meaning as well the risks and consequences of tornadoes have changed, and increased due to people outside of the generally accepted Tornado Alley are facing tornadic weather that they're not accustomed to, which ups the risk factor. Other preliminary evidence shows that changes in climate, for example, temperature and humidity changes, can be linked to changes in tornadic patterns is they really affect how tornadoes form. Okay, I want to talk about my data and methodology. What I originally proposed and what I ended up having to do were two different things, so I've separated that into two different sets of slides. My original proposed data can be seen in the table on the right. There were 9 different data sets. I originally wanted to use data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, which would have given me a lot more factors, but these particular data sets were a little bit more cumbersome and would have taken longer than I really had for gathering data for this particular project. I also had 2 different types of tornado data, tornado tracks, and then just tornadoes. Climate indicators, which showed a rate of change for temperature and precipitation over the last century. And then Dr. Baxter recommended I looked into the PRISM climate group when I was having trouble with the NOAA data. And I was actually able to find data through them that would work for this project for temperature and precipitation. My original proposed methodology was develop a study area, use the Anslin Local Morans 1 analysis to find clusters and outliers, use hotspot analysis to determine where hotspots were in both climate and tornadic data. For the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association data, I was planning on using Kriging/IDW interpolation to make those data sets usable in the scope of this project. And the results would be maps, graphs, and charts. So what I actually utilized were these 6 data sets. The only difference in these is I do not have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association data sets. All the other data sets I did use. For the discrepancies in methodology, the only thing I didn't use was the Kriging/IDW interpolation because I didn't use the data sets that those needed. And I added a hotspot comparison to compare the hotspot maps. Okay, so first of all, I went through and developed my study area using the tornado tracks data set. This was done to show where tornadoes occurred and impacted within the United States, so I could narrow down the study area to only those states that had a high occurrence of tornadic activity. This led me to a study area of 18 different states. Then I looked at the tornado data sets by trends between 2 different time frames. Because I wanted to compare, especially the climate patterns, I had to look at an older set of data and a newer set of data. So the older set of data was from the time frame 1950 to 1980, and the newer set of data was from 1991 to 2020. So when I looked at these in the tornadic data, I found that there was an increase, a significant increase with the 1991 to 2020 data set as far as tornadoes. The table at the top of the screen shows just a breakdown of 4 years for each data set. I tried to keep it on the decades of what those tornado counts really looked like. So there was an increase in that. And then I also noticed that by state, there was an increase throughout the study area instead of just in one specific spot. Like instead of it just being located in an increase in Tornado Alley, it was actually across the entire study area. So then I got into my analysis. And in my analysis on the hotspot map, the bottom left shows the 1950 to 1980 data set, and the bottom right of that map shows the 1991 to 2020 data set. And we can see through that there's been an increase in hotspots as well as they are more spread out So that shows a change in where the tornadic data or tornadic activity is actually happening. The Moran's 1 analysis showed a similar thing with outliers. There were a higher number of outliers, especially high-low outliers, within the 1991 to 2020 data set than there were the 1950 to 1980. With the PRISM climate data sets, the way that they were put together, I couldn't do the Moran's or the hotspot analysis on these, but I was able to compare them in a slightly different way. So first of all, I just compared side by side for the precipitation trends, in which I found that there was an increase in precipitation across the study area. For the temperature trends, it was harder just to visually see the difference between those. But I did look at the maximum temperatures, which are the ones on the top, and the minimum temperatures, which were the ones on the top, and the maximum temperatures, which are the ones on the bottom. There are some slight differences, but nothing that can be really picked out by just visually looking at it. So I used the raster calculator to do a difference measurement for these climate factors. And I found that there was a decrease in temperature for minimum temperature. Why did it do that? For minimum temperature largely in Oklahoma and Kansas. And for maximum temperature, there was a decrease in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. The only other real difference I saw in this is that there seemed to be more of an increase in the northeastern portion of the study area for the minimum temperature. For the precipitation, it showed an increase in precipitation just to the northeast of what is typically considered Tornado Alley. Okay, so then I looked at the climate indicator data sets, which just showed rates of change over a century. So these are not on the same timeline as the other ones. And so with the temperature, hotspots, I noticed an increase in temperature to the along the northern border. There's more hotspots and along the northern border of the study area. Whereas with precipitation, I noticed there's more hotspots in the center of the study area as well as the northeast. So climate indicators, there were not a whole lot of outliers with the Moran's 1 analysis, but it did show that there was significant data with clusters, mostly throughout the study area. Then I did a comparison. With the Moran's, I had to visually compare it. I couldn't do a data analysis comparison on this, but I did make a comparison map. Both of them show that significant areas across the study area had clusters or outliers in a lot of the same places. For the hotspot analysis comparison that I was able to do statistically, it showed that large portions of the study area had significant similarity, which means that the hotspots for the tornado data and hotspots for the climate data were very similar in a lot of those areas. So my conclusions were that there were significant changes in tornadic trends, especially in increased hotspots and increased outliers within the Moran's. There were changes in weather and climate patterns overall, and some correlation was found between the two. Future work would make use of the original National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association datasets that I wanted to use, specifically because they would allow for the analysis of other things such as wind speed, wind direction, etc., that impact the formation of tornadoes. Other tornadic factors that would be used would be the magnitude of tornadoes, what season and month they occur, as well as looking at them specifically by state. I have my references. Thank you. Any questions?
That was excellent. Thank you. We're kind of up against time, but if there's one quick question that anyone has, they could throw it out there. You had answered my question in your last slide, because my question was going to be if you had unlimited time and you could use that NOAA data that you were hoping to, all the, the individual weather station point data, if you thought that would give you, different results or better results. And I know it's on your list of things you could do, but I mean.
Yeah, I would get more conclusive results using that. The issue with my results that I had is that I had to use the rate of change data set more than the PRISM data sets. So I wasn't able to really delve into the climate data as much as I wanted to.
Right, right. Well, nice job. That was a lot of data wrangling for sure.
It was.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Thorin.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, you are up, so you can share your screen when you're ready. It's getting there. It's not sharing quite yet, but I can see it trying. There we go. All right, take it away whenever you're ready, Justin. Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep, sounds great.
Excellent. Okay, great. All right, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present. This has been an exciting experience, and I have a lot of passion in this area, so I'm grateful to be able to share this with everyone and this be a part of this program. So today I'm going to talk about my research on geospatial analysis techniques to detect illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, or commonly referred to as IUU fishing, using automatic identification system transponders. So before we get into details, I'll give you a little introduction of myself. So I currently work as a science and technology programmatics officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And I've been doing that since 2007. Prior to that, I was in the Army. So that's how I switched from working for EPA into more on the defense side using geospatial analysis. And I'm currently based out of Naval Air Station, Key West, Florida. And it's an amazing opportunity that I started about 8 years ago to bring geospatial intelligence technologies to the counter-drug mission. So I'm embedded with an organization called the Joint Interagency Task Force South, and they're responsible for the detection and monitoring of the air and maritime illicit trafficking throughout Central and South America. So there's a lot of opportunity to bring GIS technologies and the tracking and the detection, and it's an exciting opportunity. All right, so let's talk about IUU fishing. So I became interested in IUU fishing from my passion as an avid fisherman living in Key West. And then when I discovered it was actually a national security concern due to a lot of challenges that are affecting global fisheries, I thought this would be an excellent project to investigate. So what my R&D or what my research focuses on is how we can take geospatial analysis technologies and apply them directly to detecting patterns, monitoring activity, using multiple data sets to identify indicators. So areas that have certain types of fishing activity that can be useful for regulatory and environmental management of fisheries for coastal nations. And this isn't just focused on the United States, but international as well. And the techniques that I focus on are, like we just heard in the previous presentation, using hotspot analysis. And that really is key because there's so much data. If you look on the top right screen, the top right graphic, it's billions of points globally published each year that show fishing activity tied to a specific vessel. And it does not provide a visual example of analysis without extensive geoprocessing. So my goal here is to lay out methods and a process that allows anyone to take publicly available information and create geospatial intelligence or product that shows indicators of illegal fishing. Okay, now why is this an important issue? So I was surprised to learn that at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, IUU fishing has been elevated as a very significant issue. And a lot of that has to do with what happens when an coastal nation has a significant threat to their food source or their economic source. And that nation, without that economic and food security, becomes destabilized and is a potential place where terrorism and violence and other national security concerns, especially close to our borders, can be a significant challenge. The other challenge that I learned, or the other important thing about IUU fishing, is that, oh, my slides are automatic. Back on it. Is that a lot of these illicit activities, or there's a lot of other illicit activities that are tied in with IUU fishing, such as human trafficking and transnational criminal activities. So by looking at the IUU fishing issues, there are other things that we're able to either use the same methods, or by identifying specific vessels that are conducting IUU fishing, they're likely to be involved in other illicit activities as well. And another key thing that I found that I will talk about as a case study in my research is the China distant water fishing fleets. China is very prolific in global fishing, and there's many documented, published examples of aggressive and overfishing, and even potentially IUU fishing that I'm going to use my techniques to identify. Okay, now how do we actually take the techniques and apply it to IUU fishing? So we all know GIS provides that spatial and temporal analysis. So I can look at things in different ways and how they relate to the boundaries of a coastal nation. I'm going to talk a little bit about exclusive economic zones. Those are defined by the United Nations as 200 nautical miles from the shore of a coastal nation, and that is owned by that coastal nation. And also the sorry about this. I don't know why I have automatic slide transitions here. And the other key thing here is that there's an organization called globalfishingwatch.org that publishes fishing activity that's processed from the transponders that are on commercial fishing vessels. So that's also the key enabler here. Without that remote sensing of just vessels using detection and computer vision is incredibly difficult, and oftentimes isn't possible with that level of resolution to determine whether a vessel is fishing or not. So it really is dependent on this Global Fishing Watch and the AIS transponder. So previous research has shown the potential and the application of hotspot and pattern analysis to maritime activity has proven to have very successful results. There's also a lot of published research on using AIS transponder data to derive fishing activity and to analyze specific indicators of IUU fishing. And one thing that is not published in current peer review research is the specific application of the Geddes or GI star hotspot analysis to illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. And why I'm focused on this particular technique is because it doesn't just provide a simple density of here's the location of a particular phenomena or activity, but it uses a statistical measure, and the actual information within the data set is fishing hours within a given point feature to say this is statistically a hotspot. And that information then can be used to identify those areas that have highest intensity. And if those highest intensity areas are near sensitive, either within another nation's boundary or within a marine protected area, those could potentially be indicators of IUU fishing. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the data sources and the methodology here of my research. So I mentioned a little bit about AIS, automatic identification system. This is a commercial transponder that's required by all commercial fishing vessels. There are other systems out there, but globally AIS is the most popular. And Global Fishing Watch does a lot of the AI, the deep learning, convolutional neural network processing to say this vessel in this area traveling at this speed and the patterns of changing course is likely to be fishing. And so I'm not doing that work in the scope of this research, but instead I'm just taking the results that globalfishingwatch.org says these are fishing vessels, and then using hotspot analysis to identify where those fishing vessels are in relation to administrative boundaries and the environment. The next important data source here is the World Database on Protected Areas. So this is published globally, and this has any sensitive area. This would be like if you've seen wildlife refuges, whether they're national, state, that is all in this database. And where I'm using this information is the marine and coastal areas. And the data, in fact, also has the fish harvesting regulations as well. And so I can identify an area that has no fish harvesting, and in combination with the fishing activity published by Global Fishing Watch, I now have a potential to identify illegal fishing as a part of the IUU fishing indicators. And then just a few other data sources, the World Port Index from National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, my organization. The white icons here, the white circles here are just simply all of the ports of the entire world that contain a lot of information about the types of facilities at those ports And how ports plays into this whole project is that a lot of illegal and illicit fishing activity involves transferring the catch to other vessels that might be commercial shipping vessels or other other types of vessels at that port facility. So looking at the patterns of vessels arriving and departing and from a specific facility could be also a potential indicator. And then the green boundaries that you see here, that's what I mentioned earlier, the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles from the shore of the coast. Okay, now my analysis process starts with a pretty significant amount of geoprocessing. So some of the previous map examples, I showed all of this information, billions of dots throughout the globe. That data is too much for ArcGIS to process. In fact, if I just turn on the global fishing data just for the year of 2024, it takes about 5 minutes just to pan my ArcGIS map and refresh. So taking that data directly from Global Fishing Watch and simply file open into ArcGIS Pro is not going to work unless you have expertise and understand how to process. So I want my method to provide end users and disadvantaged users with the ability to follow my process to take something that's published but not usable and make it in represent it in a more useful method here. And so once I clip out that fishing activity, I can start to look at clipping specific sections or filtering specific sections based on my area of interest. So I can take an individual exclusive economic zone and clip that information so I can do faster iterations of hotspot analysis based on different parameters. All right, so hotspot analysis, I'll talk a little bit about this specific step here. So I mentioned the GEDIS GI star. Why this is important to me in this compared to like the IDW or Krieging is that I don't want to just look at where the points are more concentrated. Each of those points has the hours of fishing activity, and I cannot see that on a map without performing this analysis. So those hotspot icons there in red are showing areas of the data that have the highest concentration of fishing hours from the attribute of the detected fishing activity. You cannot see this without processing with the GEDIS GI star. You just simply get, millions of points, even in the coastal Peru, just millions of points, and they're unintelligible. You have no idea. And that's certainly a thing that I've seen in organizations without this GIS expertise is that you simply display a map, do a density and say, well, there's most of the points here. You'd have no idea if those points have high or low fishing activity without incorporating the attribute in a statistical measure that is provided in this particular hotspot analysis methodology. Here's a perfect example. So that data is not useful to anybody. And you might even say, oh, look, if you look at the areas that have some of the darker shading because of the overlapping of points, that might be a hotspot. You have no idea. You really don't, because it's just too many points to make any use of, other than to simply show there's a lot of data out here. And so here's my results. I started my first objective is to look at the Americas. So North America, South America, Central America, the Caribbean region, and see where are the fishing activity hotspots. Where can I find a particular problem area to select as my case study? And so two things I'm looking for here. Those red dots are just fishing hotspot or fishing with high intensity. And then the purple polygons are the protected areas. The other boundaries are the exclusive economic zones. So looking at it visually, I quickly can identify that there are some pretty significant fishing activity near that blue polygon or that purple polygon near the coastal Peru. And if I look at the inset on the top left of the graphic, that protected area is actually called the dorsal de Nazca. Now, I don't know what the regulations are specifically on that protected area, but it doesn't matter because if there's significant fishing activity near that area, it's still an issue of concern because with high intensity fishing, you have overfishing, you have a potential threat to a sensitive fishery or environmental area there. And so right away, I know there's an area that maybe should be investigated. All right, so let's go to the next step. Now I'm going to take that area, and that green boundary is what I'm going to call an area of interest. That's something the common acronym in Department of Defense. So I want to look at it a little bit closer at this kind of data. And so what I did here is I ran a hotspot, I ran an analysis to determine what is the national affiliation of all of the vessels in this region. And if you look at the chart on the bottom right, immediately I can see, wow, China has 38,788 detections of fishing activity. That's very significant. And then we have Spain, Panama, Russia, and Japan. These are foreign detections, so I did not include Peru or Ecuador. And so I want to take the highest here from this list. So I'm going to focus on China and take a closer look and see what's happening here in this particular region. And then the map is actually showing the China hotspot detections. So I can see like the one protected area on the southern part of the map. I have some very significant hotspots here. I also, if you'll notice, looking at the legend, the lighter teal line is the exclusive economic zone, and I created a 50 nautical mile buffer because just outside of that EEZ, that is called unregulated fishing. And that's an issue because it's right outside of the boundary and it's clearly trying to exploit Peru resources. And those aren't vessels that have any kind of agreement with Peru. And it's also likely that they may turn off their transponder and go inside the exclusive economic zone, which was illegal fishing, and then back out again. So that hotspot analysis here does tell me where I can actually prioritize my resources, law enforcement resources, for example, and these main areas of concentration. All right, the next step is I'm looking at 2024, all of 2024. So I want to narrow this down a little bit further. I want to find first what month is most of this fishing activity occurring. And so the graph on the bottom using the ArcGIS data engineering tools shows me September has the most fishing activity detections. And so I can now subset the data to just looking at September, and I can actually find the vessels. And in this case, I'm taking the top 3 China flagged fishing vessels for the month of September and displaying only that information here on the map to show where those vessels are going. And in fact, I can see right now they're at the port at Lima. And using open source, this was a really exciting development that just I made about 2 weeks ago. is that marinetraffic.com allows you to plug in a transponder ID number that is able to get from this data set and potentially identify photos that are taken from, crowdsource. And in this case, we have these two vessels,
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
Hey, just FYI, you're going a little bit long. So
Okay.
this is fascinating, and I hate to interrupt, but if you could, move toward the conclusion, that would be great
Yep.
for the sake of time.
Okay, so this is really my final product here, and that is I now can take a specific vessel with a specific photo over to law enforcement authorities of that coastal nation, in case like Peru's Navy or law enforcement, and say, here you have now these two vessels, which, we don't know if they are doing IUU fishing, but it's very likely based on the data that we're looking at here, just in relation to moving in and out of the exclusive economic zone, and of course, the fishing activity detections from their transponder activity. All right, so these techniques, what I've presented here today, are really essential to make use of a lot of this public information about illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. And by focusing on the data sets that are out there that are accessible, and then applying these techniques allows us to make better use of these data sets to inform the decisions, situational awareness, and the management of marine fisheries for coastal nations. And the statistical measures of using the GEDIS GI star are really important because the nature of the data here that we're working with, billions of points that can be misrepresented and misinterpreted quite easily. And so it's really important to have a solid methodology to really know what you're looking at and identify the highest intensity areas. And so of this benefits this, like I mentioned at the beginning, economic security, the food security, the regulation of the enforcement of all of these coastal fisheries and resources. And then also one last thing I want to share, about 2 weeks ago, through all this analysis, I identified some anomalous Japanese fishing vessels that were moving in and out of San Francisco port just by playing around with some of my tools and methods. So I contacted Global Fishing Watch and got in touch with a researcher that, using that marinetraffic.com, identified that they were actually shipping containers on vessels and not fishing vessels. So I've already been able to contribute to globalfishingwatch.org. I haven't had the final confirmation of my findings, but that was exciting to be able to actually reach out and start working with that organization and showing some of the results of my research. All right, I apologize for going over. Thank you so much for listening. I was struggling trying to get this in under time, so I apologize.
No, that was outstanding, Justin. And I think, I mean, that's something we all struggle with. Sometimes when we're not used to giving presentations, we think, oh my gosh, I've got to talk for 12 minutes. Like I could never do that. And then you start, you do this big project and you build a presentation. You're like, there's no way I could get through all of this in only 12 minutes. So anyway, yeah, that was awesome. And I could listen to you talk about that all day because it's way out of my realm of expertise. And just looking at those data sets with all those points, I think there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do with that. So for the sake of time, we'll move on here. But thank you, Justin. That was excellent. And Justin, you can take us to the finish line here. So whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Hey y'all, can you hear me?
Yep.
See my screen? Great.
Yep.
I am Justin part two. I am basically looking at the get out the vote efforts within the state of North Carolina. Give me 1 second. All right. So one of the most prevalent issues within American democracy is the lack of participation. According to Environmental Voter Project, if did not vote was a candidate for the 2024 presidential election, it would have won. And it wouldn't have been close. And political parties and PACs spend millions of dollars to find those voters that didn't vote, and convince them to vote. Some of their methods are effective, some aren't. On a personal level, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. So not only am I in a swing state, I'm also in a city and county that was devastated by a hurricane, which became incredibly politicized. And I worked for my county's board of elections um, during the election. So elections was a big part of my life for the last 6 months. Um, so what I set out to do, hint I didn't do get most of this done, and we'll talk about it. I set out to create a reusable model in ArcGIS Pro, which would take the North Carolina election data specifically for 2024, and take registered voters in each election precinct, subtract the 2024 voters from those registered voters, and basically calculate the percentage of missing voters in each precinct. So if I had 1,000 registered voters in a precinct and 100 of them didn't take a vote, it would say that 10% of the voters were missing. I map those percentages and allow for filtering by demographics, and then I geocode the voters onto the map. Previous research, this is kind of very weirdly GIS and election data. I can't find a lot of stuff. I'm sure there is, but I might not be competent enough to find it. But radio, television, direct mailing, automated calling are all less effective than going to a voter and talking to them, either by a political operative, a candidate, or even like a nonprofit, nonpartisan group. And then socioeconomic issues were found in one study to be the main driver for a lot of the areas with low turnout. And my main issue was data concerns. And if I was to apply this model to across all states, there would need to be some sort of data homogeneity. And Amos and et al. Tried to set up a database that homogenizes this data. It has data for 2022, but not 2024. So it wasn't very useful for my specific goal. And then I'm geocoding, so I wanted to see how accurate geocoding can be. And Strickland et al. Found that there's a 5% error rate with their geocoding. For data, I have pretty simple data. The North Carolina State Board of Elections has a file for the state as a whole for all the registered voters. They also have county by county, and they also have state as a whole for voters and county by county, going back to 2000. And then NC1 map, which is basically the North Carolina GIS database. I just pulled the county boundaries, the election precincts, and address NC, which is the address locator for geocoding. So what I did go for the actual methodology, it was a lot of data manicuring. I essentially had so I'll talk about the actual data issues real quick. So there is a statewide registered voters and a statewide actual voters database. And I thought, well, I could probably just push them together and that will be good. Except the statewide voter history only had up to counties starting with C. So D through Z, this database didn't have them. So I had to pull each individual county record of voters, merge them all together, and then start actually doing things. And so I copied the rows of those databases to assign a object ID in GIS because it wouldn't work with it otherwise. And then I essentially filtered out any registered voter that wasn't status code active, which means they have participated in one of the last two federal elections. So if they voted in 2016 but not or if they voted in 2012 but not 2016 or 2020, they wouldn't be involved. And then for actual voters, it's basically a big database of every election since 2020. So I just filtered out just this 2024 general election. I deleted everything else. I then smushed those registered voters and the actual voters together, which had basically took 5 million voters, put them together with 6 million registered voters into the same table. And then I came across another issue. Each voter in our state, I assume most states, have just a unique identifier. So Justin is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm the only that number. In practice, that's not the case. There's a lot of crossovers, weirdly, in the state. There's a lot, there's like probably 100 voter registration number 1. For example. So I took the county ID, so 1 through 100, and combined that with voter registration numbers and created a unique ID because the unique ID wasn't good enough. Counted, ran to find the frequency of more than one of that unique ID, deleted the ones that don't have just one. This is people that essentially are registered voters and aren't actual voters, because if they were actual voters and registered voters in this merged spreadsheet, they would show up twice. And then I started mapping these missing voters. I had to create a new field again that kind of combined county precincts and county IDs and precincts, because the precinct IDs are not unique. There's a lot of precinct ID 1s, for example. And then I counted how many non-voters and registered voters were in each of these unique precincts, merged them in the precinct shape files, and then I divided the non-voters by the actual voters to create a turnout calculation. And then I geocoded those bad boys and went from there. So here are the results. I created a map. This is essentially the state of North Carolina. The deeper blue means that you have more missing voters, and lighter blue is less missing voters. Obviously, there are some red counties and yellow counties in there, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute. But yeah, so I decided to run just that same information, but using symbology for standard deviation. And those red counties are now the only blue counties. Essentially, what happened here is there's data irregularities. I'm sure just something in the database isn't updated. I'm not saying there's any fraud or things like that, but these 4 counties, Madison, Pender, Sampson, and Wilkes, essentially they have less registered voters than they have recorded votes. So when I did the math, they were in the thousands of percents instead of 1 to 100. And that created outliers that were so high that it hid actual outliers. So I removed those counties and came up with this. There are some outliers in this, but I've researched, like I drilled deeper into each one, and I couldn't find any actual explanation that kind of stood out like a 3,000% voter turnout. Yeah. And then after I kind of looked at this, I drove deeper and kind of looked at each county. And what I found was that each county kind of had a area in it that had lower turnout than everywhere else in the county. And you can see those in the darker blue, essentially. And I saw this in my own county of Buncombe County. And I don't have the context for the other counties. I did a little bit of research into it, but I don't have a good explanation for a lot of them. For my Buncombe County, that darker blue precinct is actually when unhoused people register to vote, they have to have a physical address in North Carolina. So essentially, the Board of Elections assigned one place to be the kind of unhoused. It's a shelter, and Asheville has a lot of unhoused people, and that specific precinct is where it is. So that is essentially bumping up the numbers. The other counties, some were military bases, some were colleges, some were just fields. I don't have the context for those, but it's unique that there are just little blips in each county that could be focused on. So then I geocoded everything and came up with this incredibly overwhelming map. There is 804,000 matched voters and 236,000 unmatched, which isn't as good as the 5% from earlier, but it still would give counties something to work with. This is very, very overwhelming. But if you focus just on a county, I picked a county at random. This is Henderson County. That seems a little bit more doable for a county, either Board of Elections or county Republicans or Democrats or uh, libertarians or whatever, to target these folks, because these are people that registered to vote. They had some interest. They just never turned out for a lot of reasons. And then if you take it one step further and go down to the precinct level, this is a precinct in Henderson County, and it looks very manageable at that level. A lot of things went wrong in my process. My county, Buncombe County's data is beautiful and very easy to work with and doesn't have irregularities. But that isn't what happened across the state. The data required dozens of hours of refinement to get to the point where I am at now. Precinct codes were not homogenized within counties. There were leading zeros in one data set, no leading zeros in another. Pound signs in one, not the other. There were underscores and precincts, dashes, etc. And I couldn't just like write a script to add leading zeros to everything because there were some that were just one digit. So I couldn't create a solution that would actually fix it uniformly. And then the issue with the voter registration numbers, it's just silly that that is the case. I said I was going to do a model that was not feasible because of the messiness of the data and the amount of data. Basically, it was taking me 10 minutes to make any edits to my 12 million data point file, and most precincts would not have been mapped just because of the inconsistencies. And those that were mapped would have probably taken 60 minutes to process fully. But what did I learn? Just because the state has the same system across all the counties, you can't expect homogeneity even within the same county. I worked in there is literally a program that they developed in the 80s, to be fair, that every county works with. And I don't understand how they have these irregularities between the counties. And then I set out to find trouble precincts within each counties, and there definitely are those, but the issues aren't always obvious. I doubt it's just the unhoused population. It obviously could be college students, could be military, could just be you live in Marshall, North Carolina, and your house got wiped out by Hurricane Helene. And the data at a glance is intimidating, especially the geocoding, but it's manageable when you break it down to county and precinct. and references. And anybody have any questions?
That was great, Justin. Thank you. I had one question. Not sure if anyone else has one. Did you reach out to any like political party offices? Like, did you go to the Democratic office or the Republican office in any of these places and see if they have done similar things or if they have data that they would be willing to share?
I did not. My experience at the Board of Elections, they pull their data from the Board of Elections. I got multiple emails working in the GIS office at my Board of Elections from the Democrats and the Republicans saying, "Hey, can you generate this information?" And that information, while it's feasible in the Board of Elections, time was of the essence. There was a lot going on, so the Board of Elections didn't generate it. So if they have it, it came from the data that I was working with already.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Looks like Michelle has a question in the chat. I don't know if you can be able to see that.
I probably will reach out to my friend that's at the Board of Elections and see if he has any use for it. I'll probably reach out to the my local parties, see if they want to use it, mainly to see if they want to give me a volunteer job or a job itself. And then for urban-rural difference or urban-rural difference, I didn't really notice anything. The state as a whole was kind of uniform. Like it was kind of that light blue all across, but there was just some blips in each county. Yeah. Because essentially you have 30 people in a rural county that don't vote versus 300 in a urban, so the same percentage kind of follows. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you, everybody. I think that wraps up this first session. This is the first of 4, so the next session is tonight at 7 p.m. If you're free and you want to join that session, that would be great. So we'll be back online at 7 p.m. There are 6 talks coming up. So with that, we'll close this. So congrats everybody for doing some great presentations. That was awesome. And yeah, good luck down the road. We'll be in touch. See you, everybody.